The following lecture from Richard Feynman, 1964, Cornell University, one of the most famous lectures, if not the most famous lecture in all of physics, and one of the top 10 most famous lectures in all of science. There isn't a physicist anywhere in the world that doesn't know Richard Feynman in this particular lecture. And he's wrong. He's a million times smarter than I am, but he's wrong.
Now I'm going to discuss how we would look for a new law. In general, we look for a new law by the following process. First, we guess it. Then we no, don't laugh, that's really true. Then we compute the consequences of the guess to see what, if this is right, if this law that we guessed is right, we see what it would imply, and then we compare those computation results to nature, or we say compare to experiment or experience. Compare it directly with observation to see if it works. If it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. In that simple statement is the key to science. It doesn't make a difference how beautiful your guess is, it doesn't make a difference how smart you are who made the guess, or what his name is. If it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. That's all there is to it.
Matt, this time you've gone too far. Do you know who you dare to question here? You've got to be kidding me. You're an idiot compared to this guy. Per all the metrics of this society and culture, I am an idiot, beyond an idiot, a slug that crawls under a bridge compared to this guy. This guy is, of course, he's a PhD. He's one of the top 10 physicists of all time, a Nobel Prize winner. When he went to take his entrance exams for Princeton, he got the physics portion perfect. Perfect. It's like unprecedented. Albert Einstein went to see one of his lectures when he was a student, I think they said, at Princeton. I'm not saying I'm smarter than this guy per the metrics of what defines smart in this society, in this culture. But if you don't understand, if I can quote the famous John Nash, the governing dynamics of how this entire reality works, then you're going to be fooled. It doesn't matter how smart you are. For that opening tab leading into this video, I had to look up how to spell physicist. I didn't know. I had to look up physicist. It says here, when Feynman was 15, he taught himself trigonometry, advanced algebra, infinite series, analytic geometry, and both differential and integral calculus. When I was 15, oh my gosh, I didn't even know how to spell that stuff, let alone do it. I probably could barely add. Me and my friends were rocking out to Joan Jett. I want rock and roll. I love rock and roll. See, I don't even know that. And we were stealing. My mom would bring a case of beer back from the distributor. We would take one every single time because she'd put them all in the fridge at once for my stepfather and for her. And then we would steal one. And then after so many months, when we had 6 to 8 build up, my friends and I would drink them. That's who's questioning Richard Feynman. Okay, I know a guy in here who knows everything. Everything. Now, he believes he's in a real environment. He doesn't even know he's in a damn Sims game, and he knows everything. Or if you don't like my example, say it was that big blue IBM thing that beat the Russian chess champions and are now plugged into the internet, so they know that there's supercomputers that literally could tell you anything. It's Siri times 100 million. Let's say one of these characters was that IBM supercomputer, but it still had no understanding of the outside world, and it's shopping around this little thrift shop inside the Sims game. What would it know? It would be expert inside its environment. It would be genius, but ultimately what would it know? Nothing.
Plato. Et tu want to?
So going back to Richard Feynman's lecture and what he laid out so eloquently, the simple basis of the scientific method and the simple approach that all of science needs to take. If it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. Here's the problem, Richard. Here's the problem. The entire reality is an illusion. It's a construct. And it is set up and geared itself so your experiments support its illusion, its ruse. That's the whole point. Every single experiment that you run, it's coming through the results of your experiment into your completely governed, dumbed down, and manipulated senses. And then the result is set up. It's rigged from the start to actually support its ruse. I know that doesn't make any sense to you eggheads listening down here at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm sure the Villanova physics professors and cosmologists are listening to the words coming out of my mouth right now, but stick with me. If it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. Every single experiment that you eggheads can run about, pick a scientific topic, 1 out of a million, the eclipse, here you go. Every single experiment that you possibly can run, okay, will support what you believe the reality is telling you. All that the experiment does is supports the ruse. If the whole game board is rigged so your experiments are set up to actually support its initial and baseline deception, there's a problem. You eggheads don't ever go far enough. You don't consider that could be happening. That whatever I'm measuring, whatever I'm experimenting on, that has to be completely real and objective. My senses are completely objective. It's a ruse, and it breaks down at every single level. Even at the senses level, you don't know what you're taking in. I mean, you might be brilliant, but you eggheads are not big thinkers. Matt, this is Albert Einstein coming back from the grave. Say, you don't know shit. You can't do the math that we can. You serve pig and blankets to us. We tell you what reality is because you can't do the math. That was terrible, but you should have heard the first time I tried to record it. It sounded like General Burkhardt from Stalag 17, or is it 13? Clink! Whatever, with Sergeant Schultz. Anyway, Albert, you're right. I can't do the math. So what? I can't do the math. But the math is there. The reality is set up. And its governing dynamics is the math to support its baseline ruse. You've heard me say everybody in this community thinks everybody's in on it. Matt, these top professors at Harvard and Cornell and Oxford, they know the truth. They're just in on it and they're hiding. And that's not the way the reality works. The reality itself will support whatever their notions are, whatever they seek to find, whatever they expect to find. We've been over this. It's as unnatural. No real world, the way we understand it, could do this. Light beer from Miller, tastes great. No, less filling, tastes great. No, less filling. Globe, no, flat, tastes great. Less filling, gotta do it quick. Globe, flat, splat, turf. Whatever you go out and expect is what the reality is going to show you. And it's going to satisfy Richard Feynman on both sides. If Richard Feynman jumped in, he got his head knocked with a baseball bat and he jumped over to the splat turf side of things, and he's like, if it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. Well, come on out onto the flat lake in our boat, and we'll shine this laser across and see if this disagrees with experiment. You're 8.5 inches squared, you goddamn son of a physics bitch. And then he'll get on the boat and be like, oh shit, I said if it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. But this fucking experiment doesn't show no 8.5 inches square. 8.5 inches? 8 inches squared on a porn star. It doesn't show it at all. Oh, shit. Maybe the reality is delivering exactly what the brainwashed experimenters, yet still generator beings, expect to find. See how that works, you eggheads? In the simplest sense, what does a physicist do? They try to get to the bottom of reality, how things work. Governing dynamics, again, of course. So all this stuff about experiment, it's so important. If it doesn't agree with the experiment, it's wrong. It's so important. Matt, that's all they got. That's all they have to work with. I know, but at least acknowledge or recognize that experiment can't be all important when you're only dealing with 1% of the facts or 1% of the information. Or, you've seen this a million times. The visible light spectrum between the UV and the IR is just this little tiny sliver. That's all we have to work with. All these frequencies all over the place, of which if our eyes were adjusted or we were a certain type of being, or we had, goggles to translate, we could see in all these different spectrums. All we have to work with is this little tiny sliver. I know night vision goggles, they translate the infrared into the visible light spectrum using green or using the emerald green, which is interesting. It's just as a translation. I don't even know if they're able to translate the other frequencies. The IR uses heat. So, but potentially a being that was set up to see in these other wavelengths and frequencies would be able to do so. The scientists, they only have this tiny little portion to work with. And I'm not even just talking or limiting this to vision. Hearing is the same way. Sound, dog can hear whatever, a dolphin can hear whatever. We have a little tiny, again, hearing, little tiny sliver, 99% we don't have any information on, other than what science can use their little Terminator devices to translate, or whatever they have, little music boxes to translate, whatever. They're still, ultimately, it still has to come into the senses of the scientist, no matter what little machine box they use to translate what they can't see or observe with the senses. So visible light, little tiny thing, 99% don't know what's going on. Hearing, same thing. Every sense would be the same. And why would I think taste would be any different? We can taste salt, sweet, sour. There's probably 3,000 tastes we can't taste. Why would I think feeling or touch would be any different? Why? Oh, everything physical has to. There's things that, are here with us that we can't touch. I mean, why would I want to limit myself? No, the vision and hearing works this way, but the other senses wouldn't work that way. No, the wise man or woman would say, if I know the hearing and the vision works this way, I must assume all the senses work that way. So why is experiment so important if the final result of the experiment is going to be 99% of it's going to go away and only 1% is going to be available to the senses? And even then, a brainwashed, distorted mind that's been brought up in the society can completely warp whatever information or little information that's coming in. I mean, you see the problem here? Top left, kind of in the yellow, the classical depiction of Plato's cave. And a few years back, somebody had to turn it into Plato's rave. Plato's rave. See, if there's a philosophy or ideas that get close to how reality actually works, then the Matrix 4 will send out its swarms and its minions in some way, find a way to bastardize it, or to send the car off the edge of the cliff when it's close to its destination. Going back to the visible light spectrum and that small sliver, what we just talked about, and science's need to have experiment be their god. I can hear you yelling at me and throwing rubber duckies. And Matt, that's all they have. What are they supposed to do? Science needs to experiment. I mean, that's all they have. That's the problem with science. That's what they think. That's all they have. You know what gets closer to the truth? Plato's cave gets closer to the truth. Something like that. What I call POC. POC. Not Tupac. POC. Philosophy, observation, common sense. You combine philosophy, observation, common sense. Identical. POC. Philosophy, observation, common sense. Plato's cave. Okay? Plato's like, look, I don't even know if Plato existed. Play-Doh existed. I've got some issues with these Aristotle types, but we'll talk about that some other time. But you just observe how things are working and use the Sherlock Holmes to eliminate the impossible. If Play-Doh, I'm going to call him Play-Doh, if all he did was experiment, what would he come up with? Nothing. He didn't have no scientific tools he philosophized, he pocked philosophy, observation with a touch of common sense to come up with, wait a second, this is some sort of illusion. Look at these dummies around me just falling for the cave shadows, because he couldn't understand, as we can understand, why or how the people around us act in such a weird way. I guess Plato didn't understand it either. Why are these people being so irrational? What force is driving society? Potentially things we can't see. I'm glad Plato didn't just sit there and try to experiment. You know what we would have from him today if he just took the Richard Feynman approach? All you needed to do was experiment, and then that'll tell you your dumbed ass senses what's up. You know what we'd have from Plato today? Squat. We'd have a bunch of experiments written down in papyrus that wouldn't tell us anything about anything we need to know. Now, Pythagoras and all that his role is different. The math and angles and all that stuff. I'm no expert, okay? I barely read comic books, but I don't think Pythagoras theorized into the nature of reality or what drives societies like Plato and Socrates and some of these others. Although, again, I've read some Cliff Notes, and I actually took a test with a guy in Penn State. I had read only the Cliff Notes. He read the summary of the Cliff Notes. Not only did neither of us read the full work, I read the Cliff Notes, but there's still 40, 50 pages. He just read the first page summary of the Cliff Notes. I think he's still passed. Anyway, that's not Pythagoras. That's a different thing. In terms of the nature of reality, if Pythagoras is telling us a bunch of shit other than his angles and his numbers, Matt, you better be careful talking bad about Pythagoras. He's a god to certain groups in this world. I know. But the point is, to me, experiment, fine. It's just going to reinforce the ruse. Okay, that's how we know. That's how reality works. I'm going to philosophize. I'm going to observe why are the George Bush creatures do this? Why do the people follow along? What forces are at work here? Why does it want to always get up in my business? Why does it want to extract my energy? What is that? There's no experiment I can perform that tells me about myself as a spiritual being. Only frickin' Pac can do that. Not Tupac. Pac. And talk about having fun at reality's expense. Any chance I can talk about Geordie Rose and his snow cone machine, the D-Wave quantum computer, I'm going to do it. You could basically be in the worst situation imaginable, just standing in line in City Hall in Philadelphia with no air conditioning, and 40,000 people in line in front of you, like that scene in Jupiter Ascending. And if there's somebody in line with you that could, with you, make fun of the D-Wave snow cone maker, the time would just go right by. It would be one of the greatest days of your life. Now, why I'm talking about, first of all, before we get into tie this in to what the theme of this video is about, there's that doomsday clock, right? Like a countdown clock or a doomsday clock. There's the debt clock and all this stuff. I would like to establish a clock. Maybe we can do a GoFundMe and post it in Times Square. And days since the D-Wave has accomplished nothing. Nothing. So he talks about it. The damn thing reaches into another dimension to find the answer. What has it done? How has it improved my life? Can anybody tell me how the D-Wave has translated into a better society or better governance or a technology that I can use in my kitchen or the ones that will benefit my cat? What has it done? I mean, it does serve the snow cones, whatever. You can pick what kind of sauce you want, cherry sauce, you want blueberry sauce. It'll pour that sauce over you to ice. But what has it done? Okay, let it get a clock going. I think someday that clock might say 46,000 years, and we're still waiting for the D-Wave to do something. Okay, stop what I'm doing, stop recording, think, I haven't looked into D-Wave for a few years. Maybe it has cured all these diseases and done all this great stuff, and I don't watch the news. To be fair, I need to look into it. The first thing I look into, D-Wave news or recent news or whatever I did, 2022, this is the image. This is the image. If you're driving, it's like an eye, but the top is a cyan, and the bottom is, of course, full magenta. And this is what it says. Optimizing optimization. D-Wave has now enhanced its cloud-based constrained quadratic model, a CQM hybrid solver, to find optimal solutions to problems involving continuous variables where previously it could only handle integers and other discrete data types. What? Take your mumbo jumbo and shove it up your ass. Let me translate what I just read to you. It hasn't done squat. Hey, Jordy, make mine lemon lime. What do you mean? My snow cone. I want lemon lime. It's not a snow cone machine, son. It's a sophisticated quantum computer that reaches into other dimensions to find answers. Come on, man. Let's walk around the corner. You can be honest with me. Just serve me this snow cone and shut the hell up. Matt, why do your videos always start so serious and promising, and then they devolve into this stuff? I don't know. I mean, I just take it to where I take it to the exact level of what reality gives me. That's why it devolves. To be a bit serious, at the creep level, I think they know the governing dynamics of how the reality works. I think they know if they want reality to move in a certain way, they put the image or the idea into real generator beings, real spiritual beings, and the reality kind of becomes that over time, like turning the Titanic. Now, Richard Feynman in the 60s and 70s, giving his speeches and his physics, he was never near, in my opinion, the creepy table. He understood the physics, or what the ruse or the illusion tells him about how things work, which is always supported by the Nobel Prize. And if it's supported by the Nobel Prize, that's what the creeps want people to believe. They don't want the nature of the reality ruse itself to be uncovered. Okay, maybe certain quantum physicists, they dabble in that. And they say this reality just breaks down when you get to the very small. And then other physicists say, well, it breaks down at the very large. What are the chances of that? It only works, even in their dumb egghead mathematical models, it only works in the middle. So Richard Feynman, look, thousands of times smarter than me, but he was a slave to his scientific god, experiment. He was not, he didn't POC. That's the only way to truly understand what's going on here. The creeps understand it, okay? But in that D-Wave, go Jordy, go out Jordy, and make your speeches about D-Wave. And if you can get enough quantum generator beings to believe you've got a snow cone maker that actually can reach into another dimension, then by those people believing in it, that will help us someday accomplish it. That's why one of my favorite things to talk about of all time is Ray Kurzweil he went around all over the place. I watched a ton of his speeches, and he was using the same canned lines about the brain chip, the same presentations, the same canned way of answering questions about the brain chip. This Ray Kurzweil was for 20 years, this chief futurist at Google. And then it hit me. About 5 years ago or 6 years ago, I made this presentation. It hit me. They don't have this ready to go at all, this brain chip. He wants real people in the audience to believe in it, and somehow, like at a quantum level or a reality manifestation level, it will help bring it into fruition. This is how the governing dynamics of reality works. If you want to go if enough people are convinced or can be convinced that the shape of the earth is an asparagus, and enough people, real people, go out and start their experiments in some weird way, reality will kind of show them things that start to support the express the asparagus theory. That is the way it works. You know how the old dark ages or whatever, they said, oh, everybody believed it was flat, 1300, 1200, 1300, 1400. It's my opinion the creeps understand the way the reality works. They could be playing games with people. For these 300 or 400 years, we're going to tell them it's flat. And then everybody will believe it. And then we'll actually, per our Richard Feynman experiment, the reality itself will start showing us that what everybody believes. And then we're going to play a game. We're going to use this guy, Copernicus. Yeah, go get him, Coperni. Go bring that useful idiot in here. We got a job for him. Here he comes. Now, Coperni, you can add, right? Yeah, I can add. We want you to do these experiments and make it look very sophisticated. Make your ruse top notch. We will then use you to say that we have a heliocentric model, and then over hundreds of years, because we have real creative spiritual beings believing in it, we will observe how the actual reality, the Sims game, will actually evolve over time and become what people expected or believe it is. They understand how reality works in this regard, folks. Planting the seed, sowing the seeds, and then have it reflect back on reality. Where people say, even in our community, they say this world's going to pot. Well, this world is just a reflection of all of us and our state of awareness. And, I think if it was up to just our little groups, the world would be a better place. But the horrible, devolving world is a reflection of what real people believe. And that is what the creep's role to devolve the expectations of what the generator and real spiritual beings, what their hopes and dreams are for society, what they're willing to expect in terms of their governance and politicians. And it just devolves over time. And the people complaining about it don't realize they're the ones generating it and creating it. The creeps know how the governing dynamics of this reality works. People like Richard Feynman don't. And Perny, nobody said you could leave. Get your ass back in here, Perny. We ain't done with you, boy. Now, if you're going to be the face of our heliocentric model, you got to get a haircut, boy. You don't look the part. You're going to represent us. Look at you, boy. I know court jesters that look better than you. Get a haircut. Here's some money. Get some new threads and get to work on your heliocentric ruse. So, in summary, what I'm suggesting, and it is out there even for some in our group, that even the mathematics, which people believe is completely immutable and unchangeable, even the math and those types of experiments can actually morph and change in a reality system to match what the majority of consciousness of real people believe. What I'm saying is, in some way, it's possible that the Earth could have been whatever 500 or 1,000 years ago, or whenever, 10,000 years ago. And if enough people believe what it is today with a buzzed cauldron, then even the math, in my opinion, could potentially change. Now, these are things, now, look, do I know for sure? No. But this is, through POC, this is what I observe, how things work. They would never go into these sorts of areas, these Egghead types, these Richard Feynmans. I know most of the University of Pennsylvania cosmologists and astrophysicists are listening to the words coming out of my mouth right now. And you eggheads just won't go into the big areas, into the places you really need to go to get an idea as to how things work. It ain't about trying to get funding for a bigger telescope all the time. That's just a metaphor for your inadequacies in the bedroom, dude. This is the audience for Richard Feynman at Cornell University on that day in 1964. Wouldn't it be incredible if one of us could be in that audience? Now we're going to do a questions and answers. Yes, it would be like that scene with Jake Gyllenhaal or Donnie Darko and Patrick Swayze, where he called him the Antichrist, but we try to keep it more professional than that. Yes, Dr. Feynman, why are you putting such stock in your experiments when it's been known for 50 years that we only take in less than 0.5% of known information in the universe through the senses? You're all up here going, if it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. We ain't even getting 99.5% of the information. What you talking about? How'd you get your doctorate? Mail order through Saigon? Actually, it would be the same as the scene in Donnie Darko, where Donnie Darko challenged Jim Cunningham, Patrick Swayze, the ultimate fraud. Although, look, Feynman, he did contribute to physics, okay? He seems like a good guy. I mean, he's not, I don't put him up there with George Soros or anything like that. I think he tried to do his best. He just bowed down to every aspect of the reality ruse, just could not step back far enough to see what was going on big picture-wise. But I would be Donnie Darko up at the mic. And then I think Dr. Feynman would say back to me something very similar to what Jim Cunningham said to Donnie Darko, trying to recruit the audience for help. He's, do you see the fear in this boy, people? Do you see the fear in him? This boy's scared to death of the truth. Son, it breaks my heart to say this, but I believe you are a very troubled and confused young man. In my case, confused old conspiracy theorist. I believe you're searching for answers in all the wrong places. No, Dr. Feynman, science has become your religion. Can't see anything other than what your God speaks to you, like the burning bush spoke to Moses. Your God speaks to you through your experiments. And if it disagrees with what comes through your burning bush, then it's wrong. Dr. Feynman, I put it to you, when a dog barks at the moon, does the dog have any understanding of what the moon really is when he barks at it? He has a better understanding than Neil than Neil Armstrong did. Thanks thanks for listening.